So, hello and welcome back everyone to our next episode of the German History Analysis series. This is episode 3 of the German History Analysis series, and today I have a bit of a different kind of book for you all. This book is called the Münchener Fliegender Blätter from 1897, right? What is this? And actually, what's kind of interesting, if you look at the cover here, you can see this, kind of interesting looking chap here. But then this is actually the Oktoberfest grounds, so to speak. You can see the statue of Bavaria here, if you've ever been to Oktoberfest, or you can simply look up Theresienwiese. You can look that up on Google Maps in Munich. And you'll see there's a big area, big open grounds where they host the Oktoberfest every year. And this is that, more or less. And then here you see the statue of Bavaria. Now, Münchener Fliegender Blätter, what is that? Well, this is basically a comic book, for lack of a better term. At the time, these types of books were common to print. They were basically collections of comedic drawings and like I said, in our modern term, comics. They're more like cartoons. That's the word I want to use. They're more like comedic cartoons that were satirical of society at the time, from many different types of satirical cartoonists. And actually, one of the first books that I was exposed to from this time period was a book that my father received. It was a gift from a Royal Navy officer who he worked with, and it was a collection of these types of satirical cartoons from the British Punch magazine. Actually, it was a collection of the 1916 to 17 Punch magazine writings and cartoons and all sorts of stuff. It was really, really interesting. This is something similar. However, this is more light reading. The Punch magazine, that year collection, it was a lot to read. But this is very much just, satirical cartoons for the year 1897. Now, unfortunately, this book is not in the best condition. As you can see, the spine is kind of torn up a bit, and not only that, but so both the back cover and the front cover, both the back cover and the front cover, unfortunately, are not exactly attached to the book's content anymore. That's a risk you take when you handle old things. Fortunately, the inside content is all in perfect shape, so to speak. So in this video, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the history of the book. I just want to look more at the jokes and the cartoons that are present. And so we will take a look at those together. So, surprise, this is Anthony from about 2 to 3 weeks in the future here. I went to Turkey on vacation the day after I started filming that video, and to be quite frank, I stopped filming that video due to other work I had to do on that day, and I decided to put it on hold until I got back. It's been a few weeks, but here I am again. Let's continue with the video. You can see it's like you can change the video and see my hair growing, my beard getting longer, and of course new additions to the international whatever I got going on here. Nice, good. Let's talk about, like I said, some of the comics and cartoons that are present in this book. Now, as I said in my last video, this will kind of tie in a little bit with the theme of women being oppressed to some degree, because they seem to be the butt of the joke, the butt of many of these jokes. Quite funny that I found this book that matches so well with the topic that we were talking about before. Of course, these jokes don't really hint on, these sort of high social topics. It's pretty lowbrow humor oftentimes. It's like, oh, women, dumb. That's pretty much how it sums up. But there are various forms of jokes, such as cartoons, satirical conversations, like one-liners sometimes even, but in the written form, which is quite interesting to see that style of humor has persisted over time, just through different forms. It is quite interesting to see, given the previous research that we have done. The book seems to focus on social stereotypes most of the time. So, of course, women are a part of that, but there's also other things that it talks about: class differences, regional differences, dialect differences. Satirical conversations, poems, satire, and, as I said, general lowbrow humor. But who's to say that isn't for everyone? I like a little bit of a bof joke every now and then, so, let's take a gander at what we got here. Starting off with our first cartoon here, this is titled End of a Women's Friendship. It shows the three women painting each other, and then they trade, and Ella, Ada, and Olga, in unison, they say, oh, astounding, that's supposed to be me, and they're all insulted that their friends saw them as ugly. The next one, we see an elderly gentleman speaking to a young woman, and he says, Emma, I find you, very attractive. I love you and I want to marry you. And the woman says, have you already said that to my mother? And the man says, yes, 20 years ago. But how do you know that? So I don't really know what the joke is here. I guess that the woman is smart, that she found out that the man told the mom that he wanted to marry her 20 years ago. So I don't know if they're painting the man as the creep, or if the woman as kind of smart that she knows that he's being predatory. I don't know. I really don't know what the joke is there. The next one, this is actually a short story. It shows this guy who he's basically a German equivalent of a redneck. He is a farmhand and or a farmer. I can't quite remember. I'd have to reread it here, but he's a farmer basically who lives in the country. And keep in mind, this is 1897, so several decades into the swing of industrialization, and of course, these societies, especially Germany, is urbanizing, and that is present in a lot of these cartoons. So this man from the country, he goes to visit the city, and you can see he's smoking a cigar, and the point of the story is he accidentally, he's kind of naive to the culture of city life. That's kind of the point of the story, is that he's just a simple country folk, who goes to the city, and the city is very strange to him. The people there are very different. And he's smoking a cigar. He accidentally puts the cigar out on his tongue when he goes to smoke it, and so he has a big fat red tongue, and that's been burnt, and he goes around the city trying to look at his tongue in a shop window so that way he can get a reflection to see how it is, but he's sticking his tongue out, and that's rude. So people inside the shop say, oh, look at this country bumpkin, sticking out his tongue, so rude, and they chase him off, and he says, oh, wow. Then he goes to another storefront where there's a big glass ball or glass globe, and same thing, he's sticking out his tongue to try to get a look at it, and the people say, oh, look at how rude this man is, he's sticking his tongue out. And so he eventually gets arrested by the police and sent home, and he basically says, oh, back home the people are not like they are in the city. It's basically a cartoon that is meant to portray the kind of ridiculous, maybe stuck-up nature of city folk. I found it quite interesting. Moving on here, we see, this is a fun one. This one's called, as you can see at the top in French, Terrible Kid. And the mom is saying, Paul, sit still. Otherwise, you'll get a hit. You'll get a slap. And then the kid says, Mom, if you hit me, then I'll tell the conductor that I'm older than 4 years old, and then you'll have to pay for me. So that's kind of funny, the kids being cheeky. And I think that's something that maybe kids might even still say today. I don't know. I don't have any kids. This next one is returning to the topic of women. Here we see kind of a burly maid woman, most likely the woman in charge of the cleaning crew of other women. And we see this other young woman dressed finely, and she is getting a talking to from the most likely in charge burly woman. She says, "Under no circumstances can I allow it that you have a free day, a free afternoon every week." And the young woman responds, but madam, on Wednesday I have my jour fixe, which is my fixed afternoon when it's for me." And that's the joke. Basically, the joke is here, the older woman is telling this younger, maybe more progressive woman, "I can't allow you to have a free day for yourself." I imagine the joke is here that this younger woman is absurd for wanting to have a day to herself, basically. I think that's the joke. This next one I also don't really understand. It's titled "In the Officers' Hall," and there's a man speaking to a lieutenant, and he says, "Have you heard, Lieutenant, that a young woman has suddenly become afflicted with heart pains?" Or maybe heartache is perhaps a better translation. And the lieutenant responds, "Oh, that is definitely unfortunate, but there is nothing else we can do." I think the joke there, it could go one of two ways, in my opinion. It could either be this man is, I don't know, happy that a woman has had heartache, maybe for the nice lieutenant in uniform, or it is reflecting the officer's lack of care for the underlings, showing his reflective attitude to this young woman as he would be to his own soldiers. We say, "Oh, some soldiers died in the field," and the officer says, "Oh, well, there's nothing we can do." Since armies back then were quite, they had strict hierarchy and officers and enlisted men, and there wasn't much consideration for the enlisted man. Or maybe it's a little bit of both, trying to highlight both at the same time. How officers only think about women, but then also treat them like they do their enlisted men. That's my guess. Any other interpretations are open as well. This next one is kind of fun. I really liked it because I like frogs. But it talks about, it's a poem about a young frog, a young female frog, who is approached by this young Casanova frog who initially hits on this young woman and gets her attention and her attraction, but he blows cigarette smoke in her face, and she calls him green, which is a pun because, if you call a person green, they're inexperienced and they don't know what they're doing, and then he's also a frog, so he's green. And he's green in the way of women, meaning, in order to get a woman, you shouldn't blow smoke in her face. That's immature, right? This is not the only time in this book they mention blowing smoke in a woman's face as being an immature thing that men do. Interesting that is present more than once. This next one's quite clever, even though it is also a bit sexist, but it's funny. It's called "Our Girls," and it's a poem about schoolgirls concerned with presumably studies and progressive ideas of young women becoming educated. They, upon seeing a spoon, regard in French, mais what is that? I think the joke here being that young girls seeing a cooking spoon and they are like, "Oh, what's that?" These women today, they don't know how to cook. They don't even recognize a spoon. I think that's the joke. I say it's funny because the poem is actually well written. It rhymes quite well, given that it even uses a French punchline in a German poem. It's linguistically it's cool. The joke, a bit dated, but nobody's perfect, I guess. This next one's kind of funny. It remarks on dentistry, which dentistry over 100 years ago was nothing pleasant. I know people today who still are afraid of the dentist. I think most people are. I don't know. This is kind of funny, though, and this will come up in their next book as well, kind of strange medical contraptions. It says, it's a conversation between two people, and it says, your brother, the dentist, he pulls the teeth very slowly and very painfully. And the response is, well, he's already rich. He does that just for fun. Here saying maybe doctors at the time, dentists, were paid per minute or per hour, and so I don't know, and so perhaps they would sometimes pull the teeth out slowly in order to be paid more. But the joke here is that, well, he's already rich. He doesn't need the time. He just likes to hurt people for fun, which is kind of funny. Good. This one is also something that you could probably hear from a comedian in maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. A conversation between a man and a woman. The woman, if we only had beautiful weather, then we could go for a walk. And then the man says, of course. We could leave the very expensive apartment unused and walk around. That was a rough translation. Sorry about that. But basically, the man's saying, I paid for this nice apartment. Why would we stay at home? I've heard many comedians make jokes about... Bill Burr even. He made a joke about your girlfriend making plans on a Sunday. Saying, yes, why wouldn't I like to go out and spend money at a brunch and walk around town when I could just stay home and watch football? Yeah, sounds like a great idea, basically. Except this guy is saying that, I paid for the apartment. Of course, let's leave it, Once again, repressing women. Right. Good, let's continue. This one's also a classic here. Here we see a man protecting his mother-in-law from a tiger. It says, how the plantation owner lost his mother-in-law. And you can see his cheeky smile on his face as he gets out of the way of the attacking tiger, and the tiger kills his mother-in-law. How funny. Ha ha ha. Below that picture actually is another quite funny story. It says, the sandbank, the captain. Lutze is the name of the person, I imagine. Lutze, do you know these waters quite well? At this degree, you can find many sandbanks. And then Lutze responds, of course, I know them well, Captain. Parentheses, the ship moves with a tremendous backswing. Look, there we have an example already. So, kind of like SpongeBob when they go with the ship, with the Flying Dutchman. That's a good one. Here we have a few more examples. I don't want to... this book is really full of so many cartoons. It would be too much time to see them all. But I really recommend finding books from this time period with these cartoons, political cartoons, satirical cartoons, because they're generally really great lenses into the time period, and sometimes they are pretty funny. This one's quite self-explanatory. A stranger says, why is the ham and sausage hanging up there? And somebody from the town says, the farmers hung it up there in order to give it a smoky flavor. And you can see the train going through there. This is a reflection of the increasing urbanism and industrialization in cities, and people joking that they could use the train smoke, probably the pollution, to smoke their sausages, right? This one also reflects the class and military society of the time. We see the two men in the background speaking about what we see in the foreground, this young officer and his woman. And one of the men says, have you seen that the first-year officer has received his buttons, has received his, new rank, more or less? And the other one says, I hear it already. There's a verb that you can't really translate, but it's näselt schon. Näsen is when somebody speaks like this. They bring in their nose and they talk like this. Ha, 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 ha. they're saying, I haven't seen the new rank, but I've heard it in his voice. So this guy, he gets a new rank, and now, suddenly he speaks like this, and ho, ho, ho. So it's even funny that that even exists in German as well. This next one is probably the funniest I have seen, and it reads just like some Twitter meme from last year. It's incredible. I think this is the greatest proof that we as human beings have not changed in the slightest. It has this super long description, just like you see some of those ironic posts about some totally obscure situation, then it gives a really short punchline. Let me read it to you, and you can see there's the man questioning his friend in the boat there who looks like maybe he's a bit wet. It reads as such: two passionate fishermen are fishing for the first time in a newfound pond. One of them is careless and falls over in the water. He's pulled out from his friend, and after a stressful effort is brought back to consciousness. After having barely opened his eyes, the other one asks, did you see a lot of fish?" So, it's dumb. It's so dumb, but it feels like a shit post from nowadays. Yeah, Jesus. This one's also kind of funny. It's short and sweet and reflects the culture at the time. We see a lot of times fashion from this time period seemed so impractical, and I think this shows that the people were also kind of aware of that. It's titled "Important Question," and the one officer looks to his other, squinting with his monocle, and he says, "So, comrade, can you laugh with the monocle in your eye?" Showing that even they understand that it's ridiculous that they wear this thing. I've always wondered how they wear that. Here's the last one I want to talk about. It's titled "Impatient," and you can see that a man has pulled a woman from the water, and he says, "Oh, I have saved you from drowning, Miss Ottilie. Now you will certainly offer your hand to me in marriage." And the woman responds, "But please, Mr. Doctor, give me a bit of time to dry off first." So, once again, showing the impatience of man to get his woman, more or less. As I said, I barely touched on half of the different cartoons and just funny satire of the time. Like I said, a lot of it's lowbrow stuff, but it's pretty funny to look at it nowadays. And once again, also interesting that you can see what was funny to society at the time. What they found annoying, what they found interesting, funny. That's basically like a microscope into this time in the past. So that's really, really interesting. That's why I read these books, is so I can get an idea of how people thought in the past, but also I can see my own identity present in these cartoons, to see that the style of humor, like the fisherman one, it still exists today. This type of kind of setup, boom, punchline. Of course, the topics are different, but we really haven't changed much. We've changed tremendously as well, and that's really, really interesting to see. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a shorter one this time. That's a good thing, I think. And yes, next video we will move on to the First World War. We're going to skip ahead about 20 years to 1917, or maybe 1916, and we're going to look at an almanac that features some stories that I'm not really too interested in, but some other advertisements from this time, and also commentary on the First World War from the German perspective. So this will be quite interesting to see for all you non-Germans out there. Feel free to leave a comment, ask me any questions, please. I'm here to have a discussion about this, and I'll see you in the next video.